Does John Harbaugh really have the Dolphins blocked? Or is the New York media playing mind games with us? The rumors are swirling that he's already down to 2 teams, but I'm telling you right now, don't believe the noise. Miami isn't just watching from the sidelines. They are about to pull up a chair at the most exclusive table in the NFL. Before we dive into the chaos of this coaching search, do me a huge favor. Smash that like button, share this with your fellow diehards, and subscribe so you never miss a beat of this offseason drama. We need to have a serious heart-to-heart about what is happening with the John Harbaugh sweepstakes, because the narrative being spun right now is frankly insulting to our intelligence. You have Hughes, who is deep in the trenches of the New York media covering the Jets and Giants, coming out late Sunday or early Monday with a report that sent shockwaves through the timeline. He is claiming that Harbaugh is believed to be down to just the Giants and the Falcons as his next landing spot. Just like that. Case closed. Door shut. This report made a lot of people panic. I saw the timeline. I saw the questions flooding in. Do we already have no chance? Is it over before it even started? And I am here to tell you, right here and right now, that I believe that is incredibly false. Do not get it twisted. Despite the propaganda coming out of the Northeast, despite the media trying to steer him to the Big Apple, the Dolphins will get a shot at Harbaugh. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you the ink is dry. I'm not telling you he's definitely coming to South Beach. But can I virtually guarantee that Miami will get a chance to look the man in the eye and make their pitch? Absolutely. The relationship between owner Stephen Ross and the Harbaugh family is simply too historic, too deep, and too strong for Miami to not at least get a seat at the dinner table. You don't ignore decades of connection just because the New York media wants you to. But let's look at the facts on the ground, because they are moving fast. The Falcons are not waiting around. On Monday, they became the first team to actually complete an interview with John Harbaugh, and they did it in a way that was almost suspiciously quiet. In this era of insiders like Pelissero, Rappaport, and Schefter tracking every private jet, you would expect a play-by-play of Harbaugh's movements. Instead, the Falcons just tweeted it out themselves. Interview complete. No leaks, no drama, just business. And that kicked off the next wave of info. Schefter followed up by confirming that Harbaugh has had preliminary and extensive phone calls with a laundry list of teams: the Giants, Titans, Browns, Raiders, and Cardinals. He is still in the phase of determining who is worth his time. If you were John Harbaugh, holding all the cards with a Super Bowl ring on your finger, would you rush into a decision, or would you make these billionaires beg for your services? Naturally, the initial reaction from the fan base was panic. Oh my goodness, the Dolphins weren't on Schefter's list. Are we out? Is Hughes right? Take a breath. Since that initial panic, we've had Barry Jackson report that Miami has stayed in contact with Harbaugh over the last couple of days. We have Albert Breer reporting that he still believes Miami is going to get that interview. Breer also dropped a nugget that Harbaugh spent his entire weekend doing the real work, assembling a potential staff and preparing for the gauntlet of interviews this week. He identified the 4 teams most likely to have a real shot: the Giants, the Dolphins, the Falcons, and the Titans. This is going to be a very deliberate process. We are talking about a former coach of the year and a Super Bowl winner. He is not desperate for a job. The league is desperate for him. He is going to pick the landing spot with the brightest future, the best fit, and the most control. We are in that rare, upside-down world where the teams are pitching themselves to the candidate, not the other way around. So the million-dollar question is, how does Miami compete? How do you woo a legend when you're going up against the allure of New York or the clean slate of Tennessee? It comes down to the structure. Miami has something interesting brewing. You have a new GM in John Eric Sullivan who is well-respected across the league and values the same old-school scouting principles that Harbaugh does. If you're Miami, you make the pitch that Harbaugh isn't just a coach, he's a partner. You offer him significant power in roster construction. You tell him, we want you to shop for the groceries and cook the meal. You also pitch the runway. We just saw the previous regime get a decade for the GM and 4 years for the head coach, with 0 playoff wins to show for it. Stephen Ross is patient. He is loyal to a fault. You don't have to worry about looking over your shoulder every week. But the biggest selling point? The future assets. Are you going to be a Super Bowl contender in 2026? Probably not. Let's be real. But you pitch him on 2027. You tell him, John, look at this cap space. You could have upwards of $127 million in cap space for 2027. You pitch him on the ability to handpick his quarterback of the future, to reshape the roster entirely in a 2-year span. You give him the keys to build a dynasty from the ground up so that by 2028 and 2029, You aren't just competing, you are dominating. Can you guarantee success? No, but you can guarantee him the resources to build it his way. So, I want to hear from you. Fill in the blank for me right now. Miami has a _________ chance at hiring John Harbaugh. High, low, 0. Leave your answer in the comments below. Here is my prediction, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I do not think Miami is out of the race. I believe the Dolphins will absolutely get that interview. But do I think they ultimately land him? My gut says no. Right now, if you look at the betting markets, the Giants are minus 230 to be his next team. That is wild. That implies it's almost a done deal. You have owner John Mara who wants him in a bad way. And you have to look at the roster situation in New York. They have intriguing pieces. They have Jackson Dart at quarterback. They have massive cap space, a top 10 pick, and a very solid defensive line. It's a ready-made situation for a coach who wants to win sooner rather than later. I think Harbaugh ultimately chooses the Giants. But I want to make it crystal clear, Miami and Stephen Ross are going to swing for the fences. They will have a chance to woo him away from New York and bring his talents to South Beach. Now, let's pivot, because there is another name that should be at the top of Miami's list, and frankly, I am shocked that he isn't. We need to talk about Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. It was reported today that the Raiders, Titans, Ravens, and Browns, basically half the league, have sent requests to interview Minter. But look at the list. Do you see the Miami Dolphins? No, and that surprises me in a massive way. Minter is arguably the top first-time head coaching candidate on the market. The work he has done with that Chargers defense is nothing short of elite. And when you consider the connections, it makes even less sense. You have the Michigan connection. Stephen Ross is the biggest Michigan alum and donor on the planet. You would imagine Ross would be salivating at the chance to bring in a defensive mastermind who helped win a national championship for his beloved Wolverines. And let's look at the resume. In his first year as a defensive coordinator, he was excellent. Back-to-back years inside the top 10 in points per game allowed. Back-to-back years in the top half of the league in total yards, rushing yards, and passing yards. The man can coach ball. Even in the Chargers' loss to the Patriots on Sunday night in the wild card round, you cannot put that on Minter. His defense showed up. The offense and Justin Herbert? Absolutely atrocious. But Minter did his job. So why the hesitation? When you look at Minter, you do have to ask the question about the other side of the ball. If you hire a defensive head coach, you have to nail the offensive coordinator hire. And that is a legitimate concern. Minter doesn't have those deep, established NFL connections like a Sean McVay or a Kyle Shanahan disciple might. Who does he bring with him to run the offense? We see this with other defensive candidates like Robert Saleh or Brian Flores. Usually, you can pinpoint who they might bring. Someone from the LaFleur system, someone from the Shanahan tree. With Minter, it's a bit of a mystery box. That is the only knock on him, but I still view him as a premier candidate. Let's look at who Miami is actually talking to. These are the concrete names. We know they have requested or expressed interest in 6 guys. Robert Saleh, Jeff Hafley, Kevin Stefanski, John Harbaugh, Chris Shula, and Clint Kubiak. Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for Seattle, is actually the only candidate to have completed an interview so far. They got that done early. Why? Because if Seattle makes a run, if they get to the Super Bowl, Miami wanted to bank that interview. If he makes the big game, they can't talk to him again until that bye week after the conference championships. It was a smart, strategic move to get him in the room early. I also want to touch on a rumor that is gaining some steam, Mike McCarthy. There are reports that Miami will show interest in the former Packers and Cowboys head coach. And I know, I can hear the groans from here. Is he the sexy, high-ceiling hire? No, he's not the flashy new toy. But when you talk about raising the floor, when you talk about stabilizing a franchise that has been spinning its wheels, Mike McCarthy is a professional. He wins games. He establishes culture. If you want to stop the bleeding and guarantee competence for the next 2 or 3 years, he is a very good option. He shouldn't be ignored just because he isn't the flavor of the month. Finally, let's look at the predictive markets again, because they are telling a fascinating story about who the next head coach will be. Right now, the overwhelming favorite at 31% is Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. This makes all the sense in the world. You have the new GM, John Eric Sullivan, coming directly from Green Bay. Point 1, he has seen Hafley work up close for the last 2 years. The Packers' defense has been a top 10 unit. Yes, the second half against Chicago on Saturday night wasn't pretty, but look at the context. Playing without Micah Parsons? Hafley has done a tremendous job squeezing production out of that unit. The connection is logical, safe, and likely.